Hello everyone, welcome to Amrita's monthly current affairs series, and we're starting with the polity of the June month. Okay, let us start. So first one is the commission to examine the subcategorization of the OBC class. For our examination perspective, with respect to prelims, it is important that under whose chairmanship this commission is being headed, that is Justice G. Rohini. So it is called Rohini Commission. So what the purpose is? So within the OBCs, other backward class which have 27% reservation, some of the caste are having disproportionate advantage, or they have taken the disproportionate advantages, and the real benefit of the reservation have not seeped into the most backward within these OBCs, right? And for that purpose, the prospects of the subcategorization of this OBC has been taken up. Supreme Court has also said, we have discussed earlier when we were discussing the everything with respect to the reservation, we have discussed that the Supreme Court has also said that there should be a concept of the creamy layer in the scheduled caste and scheduled tribe as well, right? So what we have to remember, you have to remember two things, and this report will going to be submitted at the end of the, I think, September month. 6 months they have given extension, so from May month they've given some of the findings are out. So I think in the December month the recommendations will be out. So I think in the main exam also it won't matter that much. But yes, the question in the main exam can come with respect to the whole idea of the reservation, and that can be concentrated on the OBC reservation as well. That why we need this subcategorization, what will be the intended outcomes or intended benefits of this. These can be one of the points that can be asked in the mains exam. So under Article 340, they have commissioned this G. Rohini Commission to investigate the condition of the backward class. This is what the Constitution says. And the TOR, terms of reference, they have given that the terms of reference is to find out the criteria on basis of which whether this subcategorization should be taking place or not. So it has been given a 6 months extension from June month. So I think at the end of the year, they will come up with their recommendations. Some of the findings that are being published in the Indian Express, for example, that was I was discussing that 37% of the OBC communities have zero representation in the jobs and the educational institutions. So that is really being a cause of worry, that the benefits of the reservation has not been distributed on the equal basis. So within the OBCs, we have the classes. Within the OBCs, we have classes. This class has received the maximum benefits, right? For example, 97% of all the jobs and the education seats have gone to just 25% of all the subclasses classified as the OBCs, right? That means the majority of the benefits are only to this quarter population, and this remaining 75% have not got that much benefits of the reservations. Next is 8th National Party. So this NNP, that is National People's Party, has got the national party status because it has been declared the state party in the 4 states. And 4 states, small states, that is Arunachal Pradesh, Manipur, Nagaland and Meghalaya. And it is the first party from the Northeast India to be recognized as a national party. Okay. So what is important for our discussion, that what are the criterias are for national parties and what are the criterias are for state party. This is a very basic polity stuff. Let us quickly see. I hope you have revised all this, because we are at the fag end of our preparation time for 2020 prelims. But let us quickly revise. So for national party, for national parties, any of these criteria, 1 criteria, 2 criteria, 3 criteria, if any one of these follows, then it will be recognized as a national party. So for example, NNP has recognized as a state party in the 4 states, and the 3rd criteria applied, and that is why they have become a national party. Apart from being the state party in the 4 states, the other conditions are, first, they have the 6% of the valid polled votes. 6% of the votes. So basically there are 2 criteria apart from being a state party. 1 criteria is based upon the votes, and 2nd criteria is based upon the seats. Based upon the votes, the criteria is 6% of the valid poll votes in 4 plus states. 4 or 4 plus state. It should be 4 or 4 plus state. Okay. It can be the general election. It can be the state elections. general election, that is election to Lok Sabha, state election, election to the Legislative Assembly, and they should have at least 4 seats in the Lok Sabha from any of the state. That means the 4 seats you are getting from even one state, you are getting 4 seats plus 6% of the total votes in 4 states. So this is what this makes actually this tricky, isn't it? So this is the first criteria. Second criteria is 2% seats in Lok Sabha in the general election, 2% seats, right? And 3 seats from, and these 2% seats should be from 3 states. It should not be only from one state. So for example, total number of seats in the Lok Sabha are around 543 seats, right? So 2% will be around 11 seats or 11 seats. So these 11 seats should come from at least 3 states. Getting my point? If you are getting this much, then also you will be recognized as the national party, or you are recognized as a state party in at least 4 states. Okay, that brings us to what are the criteria to be recognized as a state party. So first, they also have the criteria based upon the votes and seats. So based upon votes, let us see. 6% of the, now we are talking about the state party. So we are talking only in one of the states. So 6% of the valid polls in the state election and 2 seats in the assembly of the state. So they should have at least 2 seats and total 6% of the valid polls. Or you can see the last criteria. If it secures 8% of the total valid votes, whether in Lok Sabha or whether in the state, in a particular state, it will be recognized as state party. So 6% plus 2 seats or 8% without seats. Secondly, 6% of the valid polls in the state in the Lok Sabha election and 1 seat in the Lok Sabha from that state. So even if you have performed very well in the one of the Lok Sabha seats, then also you will be recognized as the state party. Then we have some criteria based upon the seats. So based upon polls, we have 3 criteria, 1, 2 and 3. Now based upon seats, we have 2 criteria. 1, based upon the 3% of the seats in the Legislative Assembly or 3 seats in the state, whichever is more. Okay. So if you have 3 state, if you win 3 state legislature seats or 3% of the total Legislative Assembly. For example, UP has 400 seats. Okay, so 3% will be 12 seats, right? So 12 seats versus and 3 seats. So which one is more? 12 seats. So they have to win 12 seats in UP. If a party comes in and they win 12 seats in UP, then they'll become a state party, right? Next criteria is they win 1 seat of Lok Sabha per 25 seats of the state legislative assembly. Sorry, per 25 seats of Lok Sabha allocated to that state. I'll explain you with example. For example, in UP, there are 80 Lok Sabha seats. Very big state, most politically important state. So, if we talk about 25, then we have 25 into 3 Lok Sabha seats, right? So 3 Lok Sabha seats will come under this. For example, 3 is the criteria. So if you have more than 3 seats in the Lok Sabha, right, then also you will get the state party status. Getting my point? Here also, here what you have to do, you have to get 1 seat from the Lok Sabha, but you have to also get the 6% of the valid polls. Here, even if you have 3 seats in UP, for example, which we get by 80 divided by 25, then also you will become a state party. This is a really tricky portion, I get it. So try to imagine it or try to cram it with example. And I will give you one more advice. Before going to exam, revise this. Whenever you go for exam, how many times you have read it doesn't matter. But before going to exam, revise this. Okay. So this is 8th National Party, that is NNP. So for currently Election Commission has National Party, State Party and registered unrecognized party. So some of the parties will be registered, but they will be unrecognized. When they follow, get one of the criteria for state party or the national party, they will get that much status. Now we have read the national party, the criteria of being a national party, we have read about it. What about the loss of the recognized status? For example, once you are recognized as a national party, but now you start losing it. So what is the criteria behind it? So once a national party or state party or political party loses its given status, only and only if it fails to fulfill any of the conditions for 2 successive assembly and 2 successive Lok Sabha elections. So not once but twice, if you are not following this criteria, then you will not be getting this party status, right? So this means that the party retains its status irrespective of its performance in the next election. Getting my point? Okay. And there are some benefits. If you recognize as a national party, you'll get some time in the this AIR, All India Radio, and you'll get a lot more benefits from the election commission. Then we have some of the questions that are related to the Rajya Sabha election, because Rajya Sabha election have taken place in the June month. So we have a few of the questions that are related to the Rajya Sabha. First is nota applicable in the Rajya Sabha polls? Answer is no. The Supreme Court has said that in Rajya Sabha elections, the nota is not applicable. Supreme Court has said that the nota is applicable to when the election takes place based upon the universal adult franchise, that is in the general election and in the state elections. But in the Rajya Sabha poll, who basically votes? Who is the elector of the state assemblies, isn't it? So it takes based on the indirect election based upon the proportional representation, and that is why there is no nota in the your Rajya Sabha elections. Okay, first point, we need to keep that in mind. Next is, does cross voting in the disqualification attracts disqualification in the Rajya Sabha polls? Answer is no. For example, there is a BJP elector in the Uttar Pradesh assembly. Okay, for Rajya Sabha, there are candidates. For example, one is BJP, one is Congress. He gives first preference to the Congress, for example. So it should attract the disqualification in one way, because obviously the BJP will issue the whip that everyone should vote to the BJP candidate. But court has observed that no, this will not attract the disqualification. Why? Because it is an open ballot system. Means the parties will know that it is an open, it's not a secret ballot that is in the UAF or in the general election, that is general election, in the state election. It is not open, it is not a secret ballot that is there in the UAF. For example, in the president election also there is a secret ballot. Nobody knows to whom you have voted for, right? So there is a secret ballot in the president election, there is a secret ballot in our normal election, but in the Rajya Sabha election there is an open ballot. So the court has said, when there is an open ballot, when the party knows who they have voted for, BJP legislator from UP has not voted for the BJP, he has voted for the Congress, and the BJP knows that. And when the BJP knows that, it is free to take the disciplinary action, but they will not be disqualified. That is the point you need to remember, right? Then last, can a legislator who is supposed to vote in the Rajya Sabha election, is this legislator will be, if he has not taken the oath, will be able to vote? Supreme Court has said that yes, okay, yes, he can vote, because voting at the Rajya Sabha poll by this legislator who belongs to the state assembly is a non-legislative activity. He is not making a legislation. Okay, hence that can be performed without taking an oath. So even if he does not take the oath, he can do it. Okay, so a person becomes the member as soon as the list of the elected member is notified by the EC, and he can obviously vote. Okay, these three things you need to keep in mind when it comes to the Rajya Sabha elections. Apart from the very basic things, you know how the Rajya Sabha election takes place. It's an open ballot system, proportional representation, how it actually takes place, who are the electoral college for that also. These are very basic things that you know on your own end. These are the key things I wanted to highlight. Next, something related to torture, because of the human rights 2 to 3 years back, it was too much in news. Now also it is in the news. So with respect to torture, what is India's stand? So India does not have currently an anti-torture legislation. India has signed the UN Convention Against the Torture, but we have not ratified it. How we ratify basically? So there is a difference, we have discussed the difference between signing and ratifying. So signing means we went to for example, we went to the Paris Climate Agreement, we signed, okay, it's good. But ratification means when you come back to your country, you discuss it with your people and then you ratify it. No, now it is fine. Now the process of ratification is different in different countries. For example, in USA, ratification of these takes place in Senate, their Rajya Sabha, because that's a very strong body in USA. But here in India, the ratification takes place by the cabinet itself. That is, the executive ratify on their own end. For example, Prime Minister Modi has said that we will ratify on the date of 2nd October. So it is their decision. Whenever they convene the cabinet meeting, they can ratify anything. But the countries such as US, they have a very strong criteria for ratification. Okay, right. So India has ratified the International Convention on Civil and Political Rights, but has only signed the Convention Against the Torture. And this is where India has been one of criticized as well. And Indian legislatures are thinking as well that we need to have an anti-torture legislation as soon as possible. Let us see some of the efforts that India has taken to combat the drug menace. Now, NCB, you know, every time in the news only this NCB is there. We will also do one question on NCB also. Very important drugs this time, because I don't think from the prelims perspective, but in the main that can be asked. So let us see one by one. First is the act we have passed in 1985. In fact, this is the act which has made this possession or the eating of this marijuana a criminal offense. Before that, it was not that. So it was Rajiv Gandhi. It is said that Rajiv Gandhi, under some pressure from the Western countries, have passed this law, and that have made a very strong law. So enacted for the control and the regulation of the operations related to the narcotics, drugs and psychotropic substances. And NCB was constituted as the nodal drug enforcement and the intelligence agency of the India. And that is being in the news as well, via the RIA and the Deepika. Next is we have an action plan for drug demand reduction. Now on the one hand, we can clamp down on the supply, but what about this demand? We have to clamp down on both the sides so as to make our drug enforcement effective or to curb this drug menace. So from 2018 to 2025, this action plan will work. It aims at the reduction of the drug abuse through multi-pronged strategy under the Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment. Then we have Nasha Mukt Bharat Annual Action Plan 2020-2021. It is again enacted by Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment. Keep this in mind, Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment. Then on the international front, we have signed this basically signatory to this UN Convention. UN Convention on Narcotics Drugs 1961, UN Convention on Psychotropic Substance 1971, and 1988 Convention on the illicit traffic in the narcotics, drugs and psychotropic substance. With respect to BIMSTEC also, we have a convention, because we have discussed, right, Golden Crescent and Golden Triangle, this area. So BIMSTEC, we are targeting this area, especially the drug menace in the northeast, right? So exchange of the best practices, and these things will take place through cooperation with BIMSTEC. Then next is National Numbering Plan, not very important. So basically the 10 digit number we have, mobile number, right? That is being decided through National Numbering Plan. So recently the TRAI has said that we will stick to this 10 numbers, we will not shift to this 11 number mobile digit numbering plan. So this 10 digit number is based upon the National Numbering Plan of 2003, right? It provides a set of rules, guidelines for the use and assignments of the number to the telephone service. Okay. Next is something related to FSSAI. So it was established under the Food and Safety Act 2006. It works under, and most importantly, remember that, it works under the Health and the Family Welfare. Okay. It's an administrative ministry of the implementation of the FSSAI. Okay, so you need to keep in mind the ministry, under which ministry we are talking about, right? Okay, then some of the initiatives of FSSAI. First is Blissful Hygiene Offering to the God. So it is called a Bhog certificate. So encourage the place of worship to adopt the maintain the food safety and hygiene. Then we have hygiene rating system. Many of the restaurants are coming up with this when they want to showcase that how good our restaurant is. They showcase their hygiene rating system. So an online transparent scoring and rating process that obviously allows the customers to make informed decision whether to go in this particular restaurant or not. And this is very, very important, especially in this current time of the COVID-19. Then heart attack rewind. This one is important, huh? So this is initiative by FS because UPSC sometimes asks these very peripheral initiatives. So this is an initiative by FSSAI to reduce this, eliminate this trans fat in India by 2022. Now UPSC has already asked about this trans fat. What are these trans fats? So don't delve into it. Okay. Next is FSSAI chiefs. So they have joined hands with this CII HUL initiative on the food safety sciences for the purpose of driving activities related to the science-based food safety in India. So empirical analysis or the science-based standard that are being required for the food safety. So these are some of the initiative: Bhog initiative, food hygiene ratings, chefs initiative, this heart attack rewind. This one is important. Okay. Next is this one is new, that is food safety compliance system. So this is again launched by FSSAI. It will enable an pan-India integrated response. Okay, so basically what is it is a one-stop shop for registration, for all the regulatory and the compliance engagement of the FSSAI. Now food safety officer, you know that it is one of the things which a lot of corruption takes place in this regard as well, right? The food safety officer, and that is why the food safety also gets compromised in that process. And this is where e-governance can take a very play a very important role, right? So if we make the process of registration, licensing, all these easy for the food businesses, it will reduce their cost. It will reduce their cost. When they reduce their cost, the consumption will increase, right? The consumption will increase. Obviously, the economy, it will contribute to the economy. Now, what happens? A lot of portion, substantial amount is given as corruption to issue this license for food safety, food inspector and all this. And this is why that is why they have to increase their prices or degrade their quality. If they degrade their quality, that impacts the public health. If they increase their prices, that leads to their non-profitability, non-viability and high prices. And that is why the elimination of corruption is required. Now that's the end of the session, everyone. Let us see 5 questions as we discussed. The first question is, the Paris call recently seen in the news is. So what is this Paris call? I will not read these statements. Just pause the video and try to answer this question. Actually, it was in the September month 2019, but that is why not very important, but I just wanted to make sure that we also cover this. Okay, so basically Paris call was the call from the President Macron from France. So basically to develop this trust and security in the cyberspace, to develop these common principles. Okay, so develop these common principles for the securing the cyberspace has received the backing of the states, private companies, civil society organization. Now they are coming up with the very different principles and norms and convention on the cyberspace. So keep that place in mind. Why? Because cyberspace becomes important not only for prelims but also for your main exam, because a very important topic in our internal security is the cyberspace. Okay, right. So the answer is, it's an initiative of the group of country aims at developing the common principles for the cyberspace. So that is the option D. Then we have second question. Consider the following statement with reference to the governor of an state. No civil/criminal proceedings whatsoever can be instituted against his or her in any court during his or her term. Second, his emoluments and the allowances are determined by the parliament but charged on the consolidated fund of the state concerned. Which of the options are correct? Governor of the state. You can pause the video and try this answer. I will move on because this video's length otherwise gonna be big, relatively large. So yes, governor does have the immunity, or no criminal proceedings can take place instituted continued against the president and the governor while they are having in their office, right? They cannot be arrested or imprisoned while they are in the office. So no criminal proceedings, but yes, the civil proceedings can take place, but they have to give the notice, 2 month notice. After 2 month notice, some sort of things can be done against them for an act done by their own side, right? Anything that they have done in their personal capacity, for that the civil proceedings can take place, but no criminal proceedings can take place. Second option is right, as article 158 says that the governor will have the emolument allowances as determined by the parliament. So the parliament determines it, okay, not president, not the state legislature, right, not the state executive. And they will be charged on the consolidated fund of the state. So this is a key thing that you need to keep in mind. So his salary is determined by the parliament, but his expenditure is charged from the consolidated fund of the state. So statement 2 becomes wrong, statement 1 becomes wrong, statement 2 becomes right, statement 1 becomes wrong, because there is no criminal proceedings can be done. Civil proceedings, yes, that can be done with the 2 months of the notice. Third is, consider the following statement about the Controller General of the Accounts. It is an independent constitutional office. Second, it is an apex accounting agency of the central government. CGA is also head of the Indian Audit and Accounts Department. We have discussed the CGA. Actually, new CGA was appointed. That is why we have discussed about this Controller General of Accounts. Try to answer this particular question. Right. So let us see the answer. So is it a basically the question was to confuse you between this and CAG. That was the main idea. So CAG is an independent constitutional office. He is the head of the Indian Audit and Account Service. It is not the CGA. So CGA works under the Ministry of Finance. Okay. It is not a constitutional body, but it derives its mandate from Article 150. We have discussed that actually previously. Okay, so while the CAG is an independent constitutional office, CGA works under the Ministry of Finance. It is not a constitutional body. It's a principal account advisor on the apex, basically how the accounting will take place, how the forms of accounts and all these things, accounts of central government will be kept, and of the state, not only of the union but also of the state will be kept. That is decided by the CGA, Controller General of the Accounts. Okay. Right, so it's a principal account advisor and apex accounting authority of the union government, and it also helps the state government in doing so. And it is the CAG which is the head of the National Audit and Accounts Department, not the CGA. It works under the Ministry of Finance. Keep that in mind. So answer will be option number 2 only. Option 1 is wrong and option 3 is wrong. Okay, right. Let us see the next question. The second schedule of the Constitution contains the administrative provisions pertaining to CAG, Judge of the High Court, Chief Election Commissioner, Member of the Parliament, Member of the UPSC. Which of the following statements are right? This is a really easy question, but sometimes we really get confused, both with respect to second schedule and in the third schedule, whose oath is given in the third schedule. So these are the few things you need to keep in mind. Right. Try this question. Try to answer this question. So these are very categorical things you need to prepare. And in the last time you need to revise all these things, because sometimes even if we have learned, we have understood, but sometimes you get it wrong. So it contains the provisions for the emolument of and the allowances, obviously, of the president. If it converts of the president, then governor. If is speaker and deputy speaker of Lok Sabha, then Rajya Sabha. So these 4 are fine. If of Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, then of the assembly and council. So very easy. Yahan tak to till here it's very fine. Then judge of the Supreme Court, judge of the High Court, and remember CAG. So out of the 4 pillars, if we talk about, so CAG, Election Commission, UPSC and courts. We have CAG mentioned, courts mentioned, EC and UPSC not mentioned. And this is how you need to prepare actually. So you can prepare like that also, that these people are not there, whether it's the Chief Election Commissioner or the Election Commissioner, rest of the Election Commissioner, member of parliament not decided by this, not written in the second schedule, and the members of the UPSC also not written in this second schedule. So this is important. Next is, so answer will be CAG is there, judge of the high court is there, election commissioner not there, parliament not there, UPSC not there. So option is 1 and 2. Next question is, consider the following statement with reference to the Narcotics Control Bureau. Now it has come into this question form. It functions under the Ministry of Home Affairs. It supervises the legal cultivation of the opium poppy and issues licenses for manufacture of the synthetic narcotic drugs. Try to answer this question. Consider the following statement with reference to the Narcotics Control Bureau, right? So NCB, that is being there. So it works under the, because we have read all the initiative with respect to drugs, many of the initiative taken under the Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment. So whether this is also under social justice and empowerment or not, this is what you need to know. So yes, it does not work under the Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment. It works under the Ministry of Home Affairs. So it's an apex draw. Just one second. Yes, it's an apex drug law enforcement agency. It basically performs the work of the coordination under the NDPS Act and the Customs Act, Drugs and Cosmetic Acts, coordination among the state agencies, state police, central CBI and all these. So this agency mainly works in the coordination perspective. Then it measures versus the illicit traffic if any trafficking takes place or any specific case is related to the drug trafficking or drug uses, like in the current case. And it also assists the international organization and the foreign countries in terms of this implementation of this. For example, international conventions we have read 1961, 1971 and 1988. On the other hand, we have this Central Bureau of Narcotics. It supervises over the licit opium. That means the legal cultivation of the opium poppy. Because for medicinal purpose, the legal cultivation also takes place. Okay. It issues the licenses for manufacturing the synthetic narcotic drugs. Is affiliated with India's, so under which department it works? It basically works with the IRS, that is India's Department of Revenue, Ministry of Finance, and regulated by the Central Board for Indirect Taxes and Customs. It interacts with the International Narcotic Control Board as well. Basically the production purpose, not the regulation or this illegal activity purpose. So it works under the legal purpose. So where this legal purpose of the drugs will be used, that is for the Central Bureau of Narcotics. For the illegal ones, that is Narcotics Control Bureau. So what will be the answer? Answer will be the first option only. Yes, it works under the Ministry of Home Affairs, but no, it does not supervise the legal cultivation. For legal one, we have CBN. Okay, Central Bureau of Narcotics. That's the end of the session, everyone. Let us quickly revise what we have done. We started with the discussion on the commission on the examination to examine the subcategorization of the OBCs under the Justice G. Rohini. Then 8th National Party, we have seen the classification and the criteria for it. You can make more separate notes by dividing it based upon the votes and based upon the polls. Based upon the seats. That will make a better way of representing this. Okay, maybe next time when I'll teach, I'll make that notes. Okay, then we have discussed some of the questions that are related to the Rajya Sabha election. So first, is the nota applicable? Answer is no. Whether the cross voting attracts the disqualification? Answer is no. The parties can punish because it is an open ballot system. Then can legislator vote without taking oath as a member of assembly in the Rajya Sabha poll? Answer is yes. They can, because that's a non-legislative duty. Then legislation against torture, we have read that we don't have any legislation against torture. We have signed this convention, but we have not ratified this convention on the against the torture in 1997. Then we have read some of the efforts being taken to combat drug MINAC, National Numbering Plan, FSSAI and Food Safety Compliance System. Then we did question on the Paris Call. Then we did one question on the governor of the state. Criminal, yes. Civil, criminal, no. Civil, yes. Money decided by parliament, but given by the state, Consolidated Fund of India. Then Control Journal of Account, independent constitutional body, no. That is CAG. Works under the Ministry of Finance under Article 150. Then we have read second schedule, and then lastly we read about this Narcotics Control Bureau and difference between the Central Bureau of Narcotics. So that's the end of the session, everyone. Keep revising. We will discuss 2 more topics in the July month, and that will be the end of the polity of our discussion for prelims 2020. Okay, so see you in the next class, everyone. Bye bye for now. Thank you.